All right, hello. Okay, you guys can say hi once.
Hi.
Okay, I'm recording this during class today. So today, you guys don't do this yet, but if you're watching this for the extra help video, you're gonna have the extra help video open, and then you're also gonna have the lessons of the Kaibab questions open. In-person kids, you're doing that in just a minute. All right, so let me tell you about this lesson. So basically with the lessons of the Kaibab, this is the area of Arizona. If you are an extra help kid, you should go to the slideshow and watch this video. In-person kids, we just watched this. What did you think about the habitat here in the video? Do you think it would be an excellent habitat for deer, a good habitat for deer, or just a mediocre habitat for deer? What do you think, Dakota? Okay, so you got multiple habitats, you got forest and plains, and you got lots of grass. What do you think, Aiden? Wait, Aiden, just a second. Here you go. You want to be on camera?
I'll do it.
I think it's good because the deer are able to see their predators coming up.
Right, they have a lot of open space there, right? So it'd probably be pretty good for deer. Dane wants to talk.
I think it's good because I have a lot of free space.
All right. Oh, this is like a show. This is like the science show, you guys. Dude, what do you think?
It's probably good because it showed that they had to make it a preserve because people would hunt the deer and the bison and.
Right. So it looks like a pretty good area. Did you say your name?
No.
Okay. Do you want to tell what city you're from?
No.
Spin the wheel of fame. All right. That's good. So yeah, if you're at home, you should watch the video on this slide. Go back, pause the instructional video, and go and watch this. It shows you a little bit about the area we're going to be talking about today. So the area we're going to talk about today is called the Kaibab Plateau. And over the years, this has actually become a very famous example of how not to manage an ecosystem. So this story that we're going to talk about today took place between 1905 and the 1930s in this area, the Kaibab area in Arizona. So how do humans affect ecosystems? Sometimes we try to help, in quotation marks here, and it backfires. It kind of reminds me, if you give a toddler kid a puppy, and they like them so much, they just squeeze them so hard, because they just love the puppy so much, they can actually hurt the dog, right? It's kind of that example where we want to actually preserve the deer is what we're going to be talking about here today. And so humans took a couple of steps to protect the deer, and it turns out that it backfired spectacularly and really went wrong. So the Kaibab deer story is a good example of why it is so important to understand basic science when people are decision makers. We need you to understand basic science before making decisions about science topics, all right? We're going to review, I'm just going to kind of highlight this page. We're going to review the idea of carrying capacity and limiting factors. Can somebody tell me what a carrying capacity is again? Dane.
How many a certain place can have of the animal or the people or whatever.
How many a certain place can have of whatever it is we're talking about. So say that again, Dakota. Like a species, like how many of each species can be in a given area. And so there is a carrying capacity. There's a limit to how many can survive in various places. And that's determined by our limiting factors. What do you think the limiting factor for deer in this Arizona habitat is going to be? I think the biggest. You think you can fit 1 million? We don't really know the area, I don't even know the square mileage of it. But what do you think is going to limit the population? What do you think is going to prevent it from getting to be 1 million deer? It's not going to be 1 million deer. What do you think?
Water.
The water. You saw at the end of that video where they actually have man-made water sources here. They didn't have that back in the 1900s. I have no idea how the deer got water back then. What do you think?
It didn't have a lot of plants to eat and stuff.
Yeah, they didn't have a lot of plants.
The predators.
The predators definitely would limit this in a natural system. What else, Dakota?
The type of landscape and the disease.
Disease is a huge limiting factor. Type of landscape. These are all really good limiting factors that would limit the deer population here. We haven't hit upon the biggest one yet, though. The biggest one is going to be their winter food supply. In this part of Arizona, they do get snow, believe it or not, and they can have cold winters, and the plants quit growing in the winter time. So the environment may be altered by forces within the biotic community as well as by relationships between organisms and the physical environment. The carrying capacity is the maximum number of organisms that an area can support. All right, so here is where I'm going to give you the background of this, okay?
It's probably bad because they have to put their own water in. It's probably dry.
It's probably pretty dry. It is. Before 1905, the deer on the Kaibab Plateau were estimated to number about 4,000. The average carrying capacity of the range was then estimated to be about 30,000 deer. So they were thinking in 1905 that we can have up to about 30,000 deer living in this area. In 1906, it was turned into a national game preserve where we wanted to protect these deer, all right? So just to kind of summarize here, the first step to protect the deer was to ban all hunting. If we're going to protect the deer, we don't want people hunting the deer, right? So they banned all hunting. Hold that thought, hold that thought, hold that thought. Okay. In addition, between 1907 and 1939, they exterminated all the deer's predators. They got rid of a bunch of mountain lions, wolves, coyotes, and bobcats. So what I would like my in-person kids here to do in just a moment is you're going to answer this question. Knowing what you already know about population ecology, are the things that humans are doing here wise? Killing off all the predators and closing deer hunting season. What do you predict will be the outcome of these efforts to protect the deer? All right, in-person kids, you're going to go ahead and get a computer out and load it up and get to this page. At home, kids, you could go ahead and type your answer in the slideshow there. We're gonna discuss it here in just a moment. Okay. So what is our answer here? Knowing what you know about population ecology, are the things that humans doing here wise? What do you think, Dane?
It is not wise because it would be bad.
Ooh.
Because there would be too many deer in the area, and like they said, they have to put in water. And if you had too much deer, that'd be all the deer would be in the water, and there would not be enough for every animal.
Okay.
Do I have to say that again?
No, I think we're good. There wouldn't be enough water. There wouldn't be enough food, and we're gonna have too
Many deer.
All right. So if you're an at-home student, you should pause this video. You should go into your copy of the slideshow and type in these answers. There would be too many deer. You're a little 7th grade kid in Minnesota. You already know this. You know more than the adults in Arizona in 1905 did.
When there's more deer and no predators, there'll be more erosion from the plants not being to regenerate as much.
And that's kind of what we saw in the wolves in Yellowstone thing too, right? That can have an effect on the land even. Okay. Did everybody get that answer typed in?
No, not yet.
Okay, I'm going to pause the video again.
No, too many deer. Do we just say no to? Okay, these slides on my screen are so tiny I can't even.
I just said you could do Zoom. Yeah, if your slides are too tiny, do some Zoom.
What's Zoom? How do you Zoom?
Go to the 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner
3 dots.
and hit
Zoom.
Zoom. All right. Or you can click the edit button and it'll open it in a new tab, and that will make it larger as well. Okay, so now I am on slide.
Is that what's supposed to happen?
So what happens here, I'm going to read just part of this slide. So here is the ending. Here's how this story ends. Signs that the deer population was out of control began to appear as early as 1920. The range was beginning to deteriorate rapidly. The Forest Service reduced the number of livestock grazing permits because they also had let people have their cows and horses and stuff on this land in addition to the deer. By 1923, the deer were reported to be on the verge of starvation, and the range conditions were described as deplorable, meaning really bad. The Kaibab Deer Investigating Committee recommended that all livestock not owned by local residents be removed immediately, and that the number of deer be cut in half as quickly as possible. Hunting was reopened in the fall of 1924. 675 deer were killed by hunters. However, these deer represented only 1/10 of the number of deer that had been born that spring. Over the next 2 winters, it is estimated that 60,000 deer starved to death on the Kaibab Plateau. Now, it's probably up for debate. Wildlife people and other people, what is a worse death for an animal? If you were a deer, would you rather starve to death or be eaten by a predator? And the thing about starvation, it's an extremely long, painful, sad way to go. Eaten by a predator is painful, but it's probably pretty quick. So if we are wildlife managers, if we're wildlife managers, we want to avoid having our animals that we're in charge of starve to death, because that's considered bad management of the wildlife population. So what happened in the Kaibab and having 60,000 deer starve to death, again, as I said before, has become a stellar lesson in what not to do. Today, the Arizona Game Commission carefully manages the Kaibab with regulations geared to specific local needs. Hunting permits are issued to keep the deer in balance with their range, and predators are protected. So it might kind of seem to go against common sense a little bit, but literally, if you want to protect the deer, you also have to protect their predators. Because if you get rid of all their predators, their population skyrockets and they starve to death. So you want to make sure that you have a healthy predator population in addition to a healthy deer population. So if you click to the next slide, it says, here's the data for the lessons of the Kaibab. If you were going to make a graph of this, what would you put on the X and Y axis? So let's look at this data a little bit. This is a typo. 1905, we should have 4,000 deer. All right, so we start with 4,000 in 1905. 1905 to 1906, the population, to 1910, so 5 years later, the population of deer over doubles. We go from 4,000 to 9,000. Another 5 years, the population doubles again. We go from 9,000 to 25,000. 5 years later, the population over doubles again. It goes from 25 to 65,000. I don't know about you guys, and this will be useful on the next page, but right about here, I am wondering, what were the managers here thinking? We're seeing a pattern over a period of 15 years. We're seeing a pattern of that population doubling every 5 years. To me, it kind of seems like common sense that they should have thought about putting hunting in right here. Why didn't they put hunting in right here? I don't understand that. So the question here, we have all these data and all these numbers, which when you just look at the numbers, sometimes it kind of paints a confusing picture. So in science, what we do to make things more clear is we will make a graph of our data. And literally making a graph is like making a picture of our data. So this question is asking you, with this data, we have years and we have deer population. What would you put on the horizontal or x-axis? And what would you put on the vertical or y-axis? Anybody want to take a chance? Kind of a 50-50 chance. Leah, I'm going to come to you. All right, what do you think?
The deer population would go on the bottom and the deer population would go on the Y side and the years would go on the bottom.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner. Yay, I should have prizes. I'm going to have to get prizes. All right. The x-axis. When you're making a population graph, the x-axis is always the time, a little laggy here. In this case, it's years. And the y-axis is always going to be the population. It's kind of like independent, dependent variables from math or manipulated results variables in science. This one goes on the X, this one goes on the Y. All right, type your answers, go to the slideshow and type your answer right there. This one should be pretty quick. I let you guys abbreviate stuff. All right, on the next slide, I already made the graph for you guys. You're welcome. So the note on the graph here says fall of 1924. Right here is where hunting, why does it do that? Hunting was reopened. And at this time, 600 deer were hunted from the population, according to the last slide. And then the following winter, 2 winters, 60,000 deer starve over the next 2 winters. So, yeah. So the question is, Did the wildlife managers put hunting back in place on time? And explain what you would have done differently to manage this population better. Anybody want to answer?
Earlier.
Adam, did they put hunting back on time?
No.
No. What would you do to manage it differently?
Start hunting earlier.
How much earlier, Dane?
Years earlier.
Years earlier. I agree.
Or put predators.
Or start putting predators back in. When would you put predators back in? Years earlier. There's multiple right answers here. Somebody yesterday said, well, I would have hunted sure a lot more than 600 deer in the fall of 1924. I don't know what the situation is there, but they could have hunted more in 1924. We just gave the answers. So type it in.
Well, mount your deer.
Right. So did they put hunting back in on time? No. We should have been hunting probably 10 years earlier at least. To try to keep that population. We should have been hunting when the population was right here probably, not waiting till it got way up to 100,000 deer when we think we can only support 20,000. Last slide. All right. So we have the graph again, and we have the graph that shows the population going up, reaching its top, and then crashing. And that's kind of what happened here over the course of 30 years. What year did the population of deer in the Kaibab reach its carrying capacity? And what happened after the population in the deer in the Kaibab hit that carrying capacity? Yeah, what is the year it hit the carrying capacity? There's one specific year.
1922. 1921.
24. Yep. If you look here, this is the top. If we look here, 1924 is our highest number. That's the carrying capacity. I'm going to add an extra question in here. As a wildlife manager, do you ever want to hit your carrying capacity? No, because it's going to be bad news. What happens to the population after you hit your carrying capacity?
They run out of food and water and they die.
Yep, they run out of food in this case and they starve to death. So what year it reached its carrying capacity in 1924? And then what happened to the population? I'm just going to say it plummets. I don't know if I'm spelling this right. Plummets means it dives sharply. It goes down quickly. Like a roller coaster plummets down a hill. This population plummeted after 1924. Okay, so after doing this assignment, you should know how limiting factors cause carrying capacity. Okay, and you should be able to read a population graph and tell if a population is going up or down. All right, you guys want to say goodbye? Bye. Have a good day. Bye. We're not out yet. Just wait. Now we're out.